coworker went on a road trip to Seattle. I jokingly asked him to bring back some heroin. I was not a user and didn't actually want any. It was clearly a joke. Well, the day that he's supposed to be back, he calls me and says he's running late and might not be there on time. So, I don't get concerned when he's not in at his scheduled time. An hour late and I call him again. No answer. He doesn't come in that night. Calls the next day. He was speeding excessively to get to work. Still in another state and got pulled over. He had some weed in the car, just a personal amount, but still not great. The problem was he had a very small amount of tar heroin he was bringing me back as a joke. That joke ruined his life. He had to move to that state in hopes of avoiding a charge for transporting drugs over state lines. Since he had two separate kinds of drugs, they pinned a dealing charge on him. It didn't end up in jail time, but long probation, and he had to live in a shitty place for years. I apologized to him and felt terrible. He never once blamed me or had any animosity. He knew it was his choice and that he had __up. I still felt bad about it. Who buys heroin as a joke? You obviously don't work with line cooks. This isn't my story, but an old coworker. And it's timely because it's 9/11 today. Said ex-coworker was a manager at a different company and at the time managed a team member who was not cutting it. He gave her lots of chances and opportunities but was failing miserably at the job. He made the decision to fire her. She was terribly upset, loved the job/company, begged him to stay. He had to say no. Fast forward a few weeks later, she gets a new job opportunity across the country. Needs to fly out for the interview. She was on one of the planes that hit the Twin Towers on her way to that interview. He obviously had no control over any of this, but felt deep regret for a long time. What if he waited just a few more weeks to fire her, delayed her search for a new job, and then she wouldn't have been on that plane? That story always sticks with me. Coworker would always talk about how Jessica and I were going to go here, or Jesse and I went there, or Jess and I got up to this, that or the other. One day, I ran into him and his wife in the wild. He introduced her only as my wife. I of course said, "Oh Jessica, it's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you." Gentle reader, his wife's name was not Jessica. I feel nothing about it. He shouldn't have been cheating on his wife. But if was going to, he shouldn't have spent years telling me about Jessica, then introduce his wife only as my wife. I do photography and videography at weddings. This particular wedding, half the guests spoke a language I am not fluent in, and it was before AI translations existed. The mother of the bride said something derogatory about the groom's mom in her native language, and I included it in their video because she was smiling when she said it. Turns out the groom's mom spoke multiple languages. The cameras we use for video look just like a still camera. So sometimes I intentionally let people think I am taking photos because it makes for better candid roll. Bride's family was from India. Groom's family was from California. Both very wealthy. It's a destination wedding location and it's not uncommon for weddings to break $100,000 Allen. The groom's mom was in great shape and wearing a dress that let everyone know. Bride's mom was in traditional Indian wedding attire, which is typically very conservative. The comment was about the dress being too revealing. The groom's mom traveled to India for work and spoke basic Hindi but didn't tell anyone. I assume in an attempt to eavesdrop. We post a teaser video before the full video goes live a few weeks later so everyone already has a link and gets a notification when the video uploads. Because of the time difference, the groom's family saw the video before the bride's side. I have since done photos for the couple and the parents from California. They mentioned that the mom was so embarrassed by the comment being on video that contact has been minimal. California mom doesn't take it personally. Cultural issues are common at weddings. I outed a school friend accidentally after stumbling across his photo on gay dating website. I told my brother about it while talking over the phone and I wasn't aware he had me on speaker. His roommate basically told everyone. When I heard her in the background, I knew the secret was out. I felt so bad that I outed someone. I died a little inside that day. This happened 20 years ago now. I don't know if I ruined his life, but his girlfriend left him. His friend group was now aware he was trying to suck Datoi.com. It really wasn't cool. I really felt so bad. Not very cool that he got outed, but also not very cool of him to be keeping that from his girlfriend and potentially risking her sexual health. I accidentally stumbled upon a 2.5 million Ponzi scheme when I was in finance. The person involved wound up committing once the feds got involved. I'm so sorry you went through that. It's awful to feel responsible, but that person made choices that harm so many people. Not your fault. I'm sorry they couldn't face the music. I appreciate you saying that. What made it worse is even after I left the company, My old boss would reach out once in a while and he's always bring it up. Hey, you remember though? I think about her now and again. How did you find it? I mentioned it in another post below, but company asked me to just go stick my head into the branch as they were doing extremely well for the area, but the auditors all had nothing to show that anything deceitful was going on. Company, my boss at the time, said to at least pop in and show face for the company because they're doing so good. Everything looked really good, just a higher than average for the area personal loans. Everything checked out. All good clients with pre-existing personal loans that were paid in full and all new loans were being paid on time as well. We were having a casual conversation when she said some comments that threw up red flags. I don't know if it was guilt or just how overwhelming keeping tabs of all those fraudulent loans were. She was making the monthly minimums as to not trigger on report/having the customer be alerted. So, I can't even imagine having to keep up with all those. She seemed relieved letting it all out. I remember the moment I knew how bad it was. As she's showing me one fraudulent loan, I tried to reassure her that sometimes people make mistakes. It's not like you did this 20 times, right?
Her? No, not 20.
It's probably over 50. I caught my brother-in-law's 9-year-old daughter. He killed himself afterwards to avoid going to jail. I have no regrets. He had been sang her since she was 5 years old.
His own daughter. She will be 18 this year.
Her life is 100 times better with him gone. I am grateful I caught him because we wouldn't have known otherwise because he threatened her and her brothers into silence. I was only 21 years old at the time of catching him. It was a very traumatic thing to witness, let alone her experiencing it. But she is safe and that is all that matters to me.
How did you catch him?
You don't have to volunteer too many details. I was visiting my sister and the kids and went to the bathroom. Her bedroom is across from it and heard weird noises and are crying quietly. She and I have always been close. I am female and she always thought of me as a big sister more than an aunt and walked in on him graping her. I flipped out on him and he ran out. My sister called the cops. He took their only vehicle and ran. I always had a weird feeling about him but couldn't never put my finger on it. My niece kept begging me to stay with her forever and I just felt a pit in my stomach. I'm so glad I woke up to use the bathroom that night. He called his mother and told her to tell the cops where his body was. He shot himself in the head while standing on the side of a bridge over a river. It took a long time to recover him. I ended up being a crisis specialist for a long time after that to help other youth and adults who were struggling through really horrible __ similar to it. I quit after I had my son so I could focus on him. I was able to help my niece a lot with my training. She is a lot better now and is going to therapy too. Music. I was once the tool which got someone's career stalled, but I do not feel entirely responsible. I was in therapy at an agency and knew 2 friends who were therapists working there. I also had a third friend who had just committed. At the funeral of our mutual friend, one of the people I knew from the mental health agency gossiped about private and confidential information they had snooped into the dead person's file to read. At my next therapy session, I was deeply grieving the loss and outraged about the gossip from the dead person's file. So, my therapist pressured me to reveal the name of who gossiped and I refused. 2 days later, I got a phone call from my second friend who worked as a master of social work therapist at the clinic and who had absolutely no idea about what was going down as we had not even spoken in a year or so. And she asked me why she was being questioned and possibly disciplined due to this gossiping. So, I was forced into a position of having to reveal who indeed had been unprofessional. And that was the end of her career. And it was handled so beautifully that to this day she has no idea it was me who reported her. The incident happened in 1990. I've often wanted to tell her but feel it is best to leave as is. She really did it to herself. How did your second friend know to contact you but the gossiper didn't? My second friend got called into the Human Resources Department and told to explain or be fired. She was given an opportunity to call me and have me straighten it all out, which I did. The gossiper had no idea it had been reported.
She still doesn't know.
She was gently moved on out. The gossiper was waiting on a promotion which was abruptly cancelled. Without the promotion, she left. I raised absolute hell about my therapy confidentiality being blown, which is why she never was told. Yeah, your therapist definitely made an ethical violation with telling HR you brought her that info. That's crazy. Good for you for advocating for yourself, and I'm so sorry for your loss. The grief of losing someone too is vast and ambiguous and unfair regardless of the time passing. My good friend was scheduled to have surgery when it was discovered she had an aneurysm. I was with her at the hospital with her family, and right before she was taken away, she handed me her phone and said she wanted me to keep it until she was in recovery. She ended up dying on the table. She was a heavy smoker for 20 plus years, and the doctor couldn't find any good tissue to graft to save her. I turned her phone back on and handed it to her husband. It was maybe 24 hours after her death when we discovered that she had been having an affair for years, had been embezzling money from the business to provide for her boyfriend, and signed over a car to him that he was supposedly still paying for. It broke all of us, and I still have unresolved feelings towards her for putting me in that position. I think she knew I would figure it out and expected me to cover for her. I love and miss you, Amy, but you're a piece of for doing that to your family. I suggested a kid I knew at school to consider joining the military and using the GI Bill later in life after he wasn't able to get accepted to a college or university. He thought it was a fantastic idea, so he went for it. Dude's convoy hit IED on his first deployment. He survived but has a litany of health problems. I feel terrible for suggesting it. I took video and pics for the yearbook at a high school assembly. It was some sort of dare deal.
Don't do drugs.
Strong men ripping phone books and do all sorts of strongman things. Took it home to review the tape late 9s and get pics developed. Mom saw it, asked for copies as she paid for the pics and the film to be digitized and would be reimbursed by the school.
No problem.
Turns out she worked with one of them. She and human resources him in whatever capacity, keeping it vague. He was out on workers' compensation and disability saying he couldn't work or really move meaningfully in his life. He was almost claiming to be partially bedridden. That was not the case. Sorry, random strong guy. When I was a punk teen, I left home and was living in a men's mission in Hawaii. I had no license, had no car, but did have a love of surfing and a drug habit. I paid a friend of a friend like $50 to borrow a car, only to later get arrested for possession of a stolen car.
Yep, it was stolen. And for drug charges.
I refused to say who I got the car from or how I got it. I ain't no snitch. But when my property was inventoried, they saw a slip of paper with a name, address, and phone number on it. And hilariously, a note that said, "Go incognito." I had written that down because the friend said it when he was telling me about the dude I was borrowing the car from. In other words, dude's crooked.
Be safe and be quiet.
They used that info to investigate the guy. Learned he'd been running a chop shop basically, and he went to full-on prison.
Years later, I'm clean.
Got my together. Started working in law enforcement even and went to a funeral. The dude was also at that funeral. He came to me and said he held no hard feelings, that he found God in prison, changed his life, etc. It provided a tiny bit of closure for us both, and was really nice. Bet you were kind of bricks when he started coming towards you. If it was a TV show, they would have totally ended the episode right as he acknowledged you, right?
And cut to commercial.
You're totally right though. I actually thought he was still in prison at the time. So when I saw him approaching, I literally said, "Oh fuck." This actually made him laugh and broke the ice, but it wasn't intentional. I just blurted it out, not directly, but a friend came to me once to casually ask me about another friend and how they were handling their new job. The friend with the new job had been ecstatic because it was a huge opportunity for their career in an oversaturated field. It was essentially their big break. I told the first friend that they were loving it and handling it just fine, and they asked if they were like stressed or anything. I offhandedly said something about them having friction with one of their coworkers, but that they were doing fine with it. What I didn't know is that friend asking me these questions was friends with a coworker and used what I told that friend to help get my friend fired for creating a toxic work environment. Not only was it very high school drama, but it ruined the trajectory of my friend's career completely, and they're still struggling today to find meaningful employment despite this happening 4 years ago. Do you still talk with that friend? That's beyond messed up. I still talk to the friend whose life I accidentally ruined after a period of us not talking because they originally thought I did it intentionally. I didn't and don't have any desire to ruin anyone's life. I've since apologized to them for being careless with my words. I don't speak to the other friend anymore though. We parted ways shortly after that for obvious reasons because I didn't appreciate being used like that. But it was really messed up because they sounded genuinely concerned and caring about it all. I was working for a federal program and had a boss who hired her sister without disclosing to higher-ups that it was her sister. A disclosure required by the program. Boss then paid the sister 2x the usual rate for the job and sister was logging a lot of extra work hours that she hadn't actually been working. I only found out because my boss insisted I needed to do the timesheet inputs for her because she couldn't be bothered. Boss told me to take any questions to boss's boss and left for the day. I noticed the discrepancy immediately and went to boss's boss to let them know there was an issue with time tracking versus scheduling on her sister's timesheet and wanted to know what I should do. The sister thing was news to boss's boss, and then the discrepancy triggered an investigation that uncovered a whole bunch of other misuse of government funding. Boss lost her job, the FBI got involved, and boss eventually ended up with some massive fines and jail time. Knowing what I know now, I would accidentally report her again. Temporarily, I was looking after my friend's apartment while they were on vacation. There was building work outside and someone hit the downpipe of the toilet, which broke the ceramic toilet bowl, flooding the bathroom. I cleaned it all up, then complained to the building management and asked for the toilet to be replaced before they got back, which set off a series of events that led to them being evicted. It turned out they were illegally subletting without knowing it. I felt like absolute __ at the time, but they ended up moving back to Australia because of it and living a good life there, so I'm okay with it now. We kept having boxes of parts lost when they were shipped to customers and manufacturers, about $20,000 worth. I was in charge of operations, so I had to figure it out and keep it quiet since we didn't know if it was one of our employees or not. I installed a GPS tracker in a box and had to ship it like 5 times back and forth between 2 of our locations until I finally got it figured out. It was an orchestration between one of our employees and a FedEx driver. Long story short, our HR fired our employer and alerted FedEx, who did the same. Our company did not press any civil charges and the DA declined to prosecute because the evidence was very thin. I thought nothing of it for about 2 years, but then a fellow employee linked me to a news article that the former FedEx employee had recently died from a drug overdose while homeless. I don't know if my solving our theft problem directly caused it, but I'm sure it contributed to their downward spiral. I unknowingly introduced a really good friend to the most toxic person I've ever come across in my life. My college buddy Chris, fake name, and I both had a Thursday afternoon off and decided to hit up a happy hour. It was early. There were only about a dozen people in the bar, including us, and a group of 3 girls. One of the girls was 100% Chris's type. Tall, thin, dark hair, outgoing, but he was a shy guy and didn't have the courage to strike up a conversation. 30 minutes and some liquid courage later, I take it upon myself to start chatting with the girls and specifically introduced Chris to the tall, dark-haired girl, Veronica, fake name for this story. She and her friends were all single our age in a nursing program at a crosstown school and seemed like nice gals. Chris, myself, and the girls ended up shutting down the bar that night. And by 10 p.m., Chris and Veronica were fully sucking face and acting like the rest of us didn't exist. I was happy for him, but got a little nervous when they ended up leaving together and her friends started joking about, not knowing what he was in for. Whatever. He's an adult, and far be it for me to rain on his parade. After that night, Chris effectively disappeared off the map. The only times I would see him was in class or at that same bar with Veronica. The dude just seemed off, but refused to talk about it and insisted he was happy. Veronica, on the hand, refused to let him out of her sight, would make him wait outside the bathroom for her. Surprise, surprise. Turns out Veronica was a complete sociopath/narcissist/straight-up con artist who bled Chris dry both emotionally and financially. Highlights include, but are not limited to, fake pregnancies, forcing him to cut off friends, demanding he drop classes to fit her schedule, and manipulating him into paying her rent, bills, and lifestyle. Now, Chris came from a nice upper middle class who he was super close with, and apparently they rightfully had some suspicions about this girl. I had just figured he was head over heels for Veronica and ignoring us all. But I knew something was wrong when his mom called me and asked if I had spoken to Chris lately. Turns out he had drained his bank account and started racking up significant debt on the credit card he shared with parents, buying crazy expensive jewelry, makeup or clothes for Veronica. That was enough for his parents to drive the 4 hours from their hometown to stage a mini intervention. In the end, Chris had to drop out of school, move back home, and his parents ended up getting a restraining order against Veronica. His parents forced him to get a job to pay off the $3,000 he accrued and ended up forfeiting his partial football scholarship. I lost touch with him once he moved back home, but I sometimes wonder how his life would have turned out if we didn't go to happy hour at Kelly's on that Thursday. That's a win-win story, dude. Your friend learned a lot from his experience with Veronica and seems unlikely to make the same mistake twice. This was an important experience, and his parents made it better by making sure he suffered some of the consequences of being with her. Applause all around. Some people are meant to be the lessons we learn in life. That was Veronica's function for sure. I definitely think he learned a lesson, albeit a painful and embarrassing one. His parents are some of the nicest people I've ever met, but weren't going to let Chris off the hook for his mistakes. He's married to an awesome woman, and they have 3 kids, so it all worked out in the end. No idea what happened to Veronica, and frankly, I don't care. I wholeheartedly agree with you about people coming into our lives as lessons. I'm sure Chris would have appreciated a much easier lesson than what he got out of that situation, but everything happens for a reason.